something you should know about me is that I am joy-driven. I'm into it. I love joy. I think joy is what the world needs more of, and I am mission-driven to bring more joy to as many people as I possibly can, and that is something you should know about me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I feel like a preacher up here. I'm like, preach! Hallelujah! More joy! And that's good. You should feel that way. And thank you for feeling that way. So the way that I do that in several ways. I teach improv comedy classes. That's true. I do that. I also go into people's workplaces and to conferences, and I help people build better habits around the way they communicate and collaborate with each other so that they can experience more joy in the work that they do and get more satisfaction out of what they're doing. So joy is at the root of that. But I also do this really super nerdy thing, which is I make up full-length plays and Broadway-style musicals on the spot. So I don't just teach improv comedy, but I do improv theater. Yes. And I want to thank you. I want to level set the nerdiness here. I mean, like really nerdy. This is from USS Improvise, The Next Generation, the musical. That's right. And I'm Deanna Troy. Thank you. Fun fact for the nerds in the room, I made this outfit. What I couldn't make myself, I had someone make for me. And my husband is William Riker in the corner of that photo. Hi, honey. He's here tonight. Okay, that's enough about that nerddom. The point here is that I've given a lot of thought to this idea, and this may look familiar to you, of where fear and joy meet each other. And I thought a lot about it because I think that we as human beings experience a great deal of limbo in between that place of fear and that place of joy. And so I want to tell you a story. And I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable. So this is exciting for me. So you saw that picture of me before. That was recent. And also you can see me in front of you now. This is the most recent version of me. This is me in 2012. I'm a little bit different. And here's the thing about 2012. I had a conversation in 2012 that completely changed the course of my life. I was hanging in limbo, and I had a conversation with my father that was a complete unlock for me. But I want to set the context of that a little bit. So I was living in Austin, Texas, and I'd been there about 7 years, and I think I was living one of those lives that most people look at from the outside and they go, oh, that person is living a great life. But on the inside, I was not living a great life. I was having a really hard time. I was unsure of my path. And every time I thought I had landed on what I could just do for a while and be stable, it seemed to go away. You could read that as I got laid off of a job, because that is exactly what happened. I got laid off, and then I thought I could fall back on acting, and I got a job doing that, and then they also let me go, and I went, oh my God, if I don't have my fallback, what do I have? And I wasn't coming up with any answers. I was coming up with a lot of answers, actually. To be more accurate, I was like, oh, I'll be an acupuncturist. Nope, I'm going to be a hairdresser. Wait a minute. I think what I really want to do is be a doctor and help people. No, because what I want to do is be a street artist. Anyway, so I was undetermined, and that's the point. And in the middle of that, my dad came to Texas. And my dad lives in Ashland, Oregon. He's still there. It's where I grew up. But he came to Texas not to visit me, though we did have a visit. He was there because he was delivering a talk in another city in Texas on dealing with people you can't stand through the art of change skills for life. You see, my dad is a best-selling author in the self-help category. Yeah. I'm glad that you found that funny, because I hope that's how he felt. I think it's a little bit when your kid is floundering and you're in the self-help category. I think it's a little bit like when you're a cop and your kid goes to jail. It's just a guess. I don't know. I could ask him. But he came to visit during this time where I was floundering. And I think that timing really couldn't have been more perfect. So it was February in Austin. It was the beginning of 2012. And that meant it was 70 degrees outside and beautiful. So we went for a walk. And at the time I was living in this neighborhood called Rosedale, if you're familiar with Austin, Texas. It's a beautiful little neighborhood. And I lived really close to Shoal Creek. So that was where we were walking, along Shoal Creek. And as we walked and he asked me how things were going, as you can imagine, I opened up like a faucet and I unloaded on him a much longer version of what I started this story with. And as we walked, I talked and he listened. And then we got to the turnaround point and he stopped. And he looked at me and he said, Aden, I love you and I have been holding the space for you to figure this out on your own because at this point in your life, it's time to get it together. And here's what I think you need to know. That you don't seem to be figuring out on your own. You just keep making the safe choice, and you need to stop making safe choices. And I was like, what are you even talking about? I am making the riskiest of choices at all times. At that point in my life, I had lived in South Korea. I had lived in Israel. I had worked for a software company. I had taught English as a second language. I had picked up rock climbing and not just top roping. I mean, I was lead climbing. I was into it. I had taught myself how to play guitar. I had fronted not one, but 2 rock bands. One of them was an all-girl glam rock band called The Platforms. And, I mean, I was really living from all outside points of view. I was having an adventurous life. I even got cast as a member of the cast of Esther's Follies, which is a vaudeville-style musical review that includes comedy sketches from the years past of their history and current political stuff. And if you're ever in Austin, you should check it out. But yeah, so here I am as Michelle Bachmann in 2011. Do you remember Michelle Bachmann? So I think we can all agree I wasn't making safe choices. But he was right. I was totally making safe choices because if you substitute the word safe for comfortable, that's what I was doing. I was falling back on habits of thought and behavior that were not serving me well, but were familiar, so I kept doing them. The kinds of choices I'm talking about are like I ended up with a medieval European history degree, not because I went to college with a passion for medieval Europe, but because I didn't know what direction to pick until I was forced to pick a direction, and that was what I had the most credits in. I picked up rock climbing, which I thought was super fun, but it wasn't my idea. Somebody invited me, and I thought, well, that'll be a nice way to make friends. And also, this is a great distraction from studying for the LSAT, which, by the way, I never did go to law school. I didn't do that. And that was the thing I said I wanted to do. So what he meant by making safe choices is he meant falling back on the patterns of habit, of thought and behavior that were not serving me well. And he said, Aden, if you want to get something out of this life, you can't keep doing that. You have to do something new. You gotta shake things up. If you want reward, you gotta make risk. And this was scary. And so we talked about that. He was like, what are you afraid of here? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of picking a path and having that not work out? And I was like, yeah, maybe, kind of, but I do improv comedy, so I'm kind of comfortable with the idea of failure. I don't think that's it. And he was like, well, are you afraid of success? Is that a thing for you? And I think for some of you, that might actually resonate in a surprising way, because I was afraid of success. It was a thing I didn't think I had earned or deserved. And at that point in my life, I think that was true because I was coasting on other things. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with living a life coasting on these adventurous opportunities that come your way, you absolutely should do it. I would simply advocate that you choose to be living your life that way, as opposed to letting those choices kind of make you. A little nuancy, but that would be what I'd say here. So he was asking me what I was passionate about, and I was like, I don't even know. I don't know how to answer that question. And then he asked me this. You do a ton of improv. At that point, I'd been doing it for like 15 years. And he was like, what do you like about that? That was an easy question to answer. I said, when I'm on stage improvising, I am filled with the most tremendous sense of joy. It's hard to describe. I'm filled with joy. And not only that, but my castmates, I can look around at what we're doing, and we are sharing in that tremendous feeling of joy together. It's intoxicating, it's fabulous, but it's bigger than that. Because when we are experiencing that joy, we can look out in the audience, like I'm looking at all of you right now, and you see the lights showing up behind people's eyes. And in that moment, like we are now, like singing along in a song together, we are sharing in a tremendous amount of joy. And I think that if I can make one person's day better at the end of a hard week by doing something goofy on stage, I think I've done a public service. I think that's a good thing. I think that's important work. And he stopped me there and he goes, Aden, you should be doing more of that. How can you make that your work? And I was like, oh man, I don't know. I mean, I teach at an improv school, and sometimes we do corporate stuff, so I don't know, maybe that. And he was like, well, what are your first steps? And I'm going to be honest with you, I did not know. I did not walk away from that conversation with clear next steps. Because sometimes when you're examining your habits of thought and behavior that don't serve you well, it takes a little time to make a new choice. But here's what I did have coming out of that conversation with my dad. The thing that changed for me was by focusing on what brought me the biggest joy, I now had a mission. I didn't have that before. I thought my mission was to make choices that brought me joy. But the thing that was bringing me the most joy was bringing joy to other people. And next steps started to become really clear. The year 2012 went from starting out as one of the saddest times in my life to a complete turnaround of my entire life. Everything in my life changed. And here's that journey. Here's the beginning of 2012. It's a visit home. I started getting into stuff that I was doing more. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what my next steps are, but I know that performing is bringing joy to me and a bunch of other people. So I'm going to do more of it. And I'm going to do bigger stuff and bring music to the table more. And I'm going to get better headshots. And we started winning awards. The group I was performing with, we won an award. And that started changing things. I just started teaching more. I was more this, more joy. I went to my first professional conference that year for people in the Applied Improv Network. These are people who take improv out into the world to spread the message of joy in people's work, in their health, in their mental health. There's a lot of ways that improv makes people's lives better. And that was my first professional conference. And things really picked up from there. I started actually leading corporate trainings, but it wasn't just corporate trainings. It was like, what can we do to help people's meetings get better? What can we do to help people have more meaningful conversations in the workplace? And I partnered with the owner of the improv school that I was working with at the time, Shana Merlin, and we created amazing content together. And everything I did then, including moving back to Oregon a couple of years later, was started then. I moved back for love, but the foundations of everything I did, I joined On Your Feet. Everything I'm doing now, those foundations were laid in 2012. And I still talk to my dad all the time about all kinds of stuff, but I haven't had a crisis where I needed his help in that way. Our conversations are different now. Because here's what happened with my dad. not only did everything turn around for me in 2012, but I was able to help enough people and build up my expertise in ways of observing patterns in human behavior and helping other people reach this breakthrough place where they don't have to hang out in limbo. I was able to get there on my own so that he could retire early. And my best-selling author father handed me The Art of Change. And that's mine now. He's mostly retired. He does 1 gig a year. Anyway, that's beside the point. I get to help people like this. I get to teach improv classes and help people like you. I get to stand up here and share that message. That's pretty cool. I think the more joy we can spread, the better. So I'd like to take a moment with you right now, because I've come to believe that we as human beings, and I'm basing this on my experience, and now also on my research, and also on the experience of those I work with, we as human beings have a tendency to hang out in limbo between what we are used to and what we actually want. And for some of you, like me, that may have shown up as procrastination and indecision. That might resonate with some of you. For some of you, it may be how you're communicating with people. You may decide that you're passionate about something, and even though you know it doesn't work to yell and shake your fist and rattle doors to change minds, you might keep doing it because you don't know what else to do, and you want to change minds. There are lots of ways this shows up. I would like for you in this moment to think about what is something that lives in that state of limbo between fear and joy. What's your habit of behavior and thought that is not serving you well? Because you can hang out in uncertainty, which is another word for limbo, I think. Or you can do the scary thing and change for more joy. That's my invitation to you. I would invite you to stop making the safe, comfortable choices of your old patterns and behaviors. Start making new choices. For me, that's joy. Thank you.